before we get into it, I just can't understate how important a moment this is for the WNBA. This is a league that has been at an inflection point this season with expansion, with the CBA, with, the millions of new fans that are tuning in because of, Caitlin Clark and the new generation of players. A lot is happening in the WNBA, and I think Napheesa Collier, lending her voice to it, has pushed things even further. Anything could happen here. This is, as far as history goes, like we're talking NBA, ABA merger type of moment. You have, antitrust lawsuits that could happen. There's a lot of stuff that could happen in the WNBA this season, and I think that, I don't think Napheesa Collier thinks that Cathy Engelbert is the woman to usher the WNBA into its new era. David, that was a much longer introduction than I'm used to, but there's just so much going on. What are your thoughts?
Well, she's right. There's that. So I think we have to understand that the NBA owns like over 60% of this league. So we like to think in every other league, whether it's, you look at the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the owners of the teams own the league. The commissioner works for the owners. That's how it works. But the WNBA has this weird ownership structure where the teams themselves own less than half of the league. So the teams themselves are in this really weird position where many of the owners of the teams are on Napheesa's side. And then Cathy's caught in this weird position where she's technically commissioner, but she works for the NBA. Clearly the NBA calls all the shots. The NBA seems to be whenever it feels like every time you see a story that's negative about the WNBA, it feels like the source of that is the NBA. The NBA is saying something. And so Cathy's stuck in this weird position where on the one hand, she's got to make these NBA bosses happy. And they have a very clear story that they wish to tell. And that's what Napheesa is getting at today. The clear story that the NBA has told about the WNBA for nearly 30 years is that the women of the WNBA ought to be grateful that they have a league at all, and you stop complaining, and that's the story. And I can't recall a situation on the men's side where owners of the teams were consistently telling men in professional sports, you should be grateful you have a league. I don't recall that argument. But it's the argument they make to women all the time. You should be grateful that you even have a job. And the thing about it is Napheesa Collier is paid less in dollars today in 2025 than Walt Frazier was paid by the Knicks in 1973 in dollars. And that's not adjusted for inflation. Walt Frazier saw more dollars. And Napheesa Collier is and the WNBA is 10 times bigger in revenue than the NBA was 50 years ago. And she's paid less. And not only that, apparently the referees aren't really I don't know, it doesn't feel like they're trained real well. So it feels like she's hey, wait, we're playing a game here and the referees kind of have an important role to play here. And if you're not going to enforce the rules or make sure that things don't happen, how is that supposed to work? And then they called out the fact that it appears the inadequate refereeing is leading to injuries, and the NBA or the WNBA, we don't know who's issuing these statements, issues this statement just yesterday where they say, well, we did a study and we don't think there's a correlation between missed calls and injuries. And my response to that is, okay, first of all, do you have a data set of missed calls? Did you collect all the data? You know how many missed calls there are? Because you had to have that data set first before you did the study. And if you got that data set, why don't you share that with us? And secondly, I don't know mathematically how anyone could even do a study like that. That is just total nonsense. You're just issuing nonsensical statements that don't mean anything. So fees, that's my thoughts.
So obviously a lot to get into there. I completely agree with you. That's kind of been the WNBA's modus operandi, especially around refereeing, right? It's been to say that we have an accountability process. Are we going to have any transparency about what this accountability process is? No, but trust us. And I think what Napheesa has made clear, and something that fans have felt for a while, is that the players, the fans, the coaches, WNBA owners that only own WNBA teams and don't have a stake in the NBA itself do not have any trust. There's no trust left with Cathy Engelbert, with the league office, with the NBA board of governors at all. There's not really a sense that they are pulling their weight in terms of understanding the moment that the league is at and trying to actually grow the league. Like, this is what Napheesa Collier said, and this is essentially the money quote and what she knew was going to be the money quote. We have the best players in the world. We have the best fans in the world. But right now, we have the worst leadership in the world. If I didn't know exactly what the job entailed, maybe I wouldn't feel this way. But unfortunately for them, I do. I thought that was very interesting. I think she's making a direct reference to the fact that she is the co-founder of a league that, should really be existing in conjunction with the WNBA. It really shouldn't have to exist at all, but it's sort of, making itself felt as a rival, but also as a mirror to the WNBA as far as what is actually possible when you run these leagues with the actual interest of growing the league at heart, as opposed to it being, this inconvenient aperture to a much bigger league, which it feels like that's what the WNBA has been treated as for a while. It feels like that is what, the leadership on both sides of the WNBA and the NBA would like to continue to have happen for the league to continue to be considered as a loss leading PR friendly tax shelter for the NBA. And it is now an entity that has a lot of juice. And now you're seeing a lot of things look funny in the light, like what you talked about as far as refereeing goes. And this is really what it's not about refereeing. I think refereeing is kind of a metaphor for how this league at large has worked. I definitely want to talk to you about the media rights stuff. But yeah, to your point, the referees, the way that they are trained in the G League to like the NBA G League, right? They're essentially, most referees are training to ref in the NBA because the NBA pays much better. WNBA officials make about $1,500 to $2,500 per contest. If they refed every game, which they don't and they can't, in this season that also had the most games ever with 44, they'd make about $66,000 to $110,000 per year. They would also be freelance. They are not full-time salaried employees with benefits. NBA referees make $150,000 per year at least. And they have full salary benefits, and the top end of that is over $500,000. So there's a huge discrepancy there as well. For a long time, if you moved on from the WNBA to the NBA, it was called a promotion, which, by the way, is essentially what it is when you talk about these discrepancies. Like, think about the lifestyle change. With that, of course, you would be wanting to referee in the NBA, even if you did have a passion about women's sports. So there's that element of it. You have the fact that we don't know what the accountability process looks like, but I can take a guess when you consider the fact that the NBA referee account, when the foul in question that that caused Napheesa Collier to get hurt was Alyssa Thomas reaching in, and Napheesa Collier loses the ball, and Alyssa Thomas also kind of takes out her legs, not on purpose, but just kind of going for the ball. And that's why we got the Napheesa Collier injury that kept her out of Game 5 and would have kept her out of, even a potential final series if the Minnesota Lynx were to have made it. That call, the NBA referee account, which does not normally chime into these matters, came out and said that it wasn't a foul. And just when you look at the process of how they do that, I think it gives you a lens into what the actual accountability process for referees looks like, because you can interpret a foul in any possible way that you want. Like, that is what is difficult about refereeing. It is also what makes any accountability process look, on its face like it is thorough, while what it really does is find a way to justify the call so that you don't actually have to fine a referee. And by the way, we don't know what those fines look like. We don't know how often they go out. There's no last 2-minute report. In the WNBA, there isn't even a replay center, which is so easy. Like Secaucus, New Jersey is empty this time of year. There are no, I guess preseason is starting, but there are no NBA games that they need to do replay reviews for. All you'd have to do is turn on the lights, you'd have to hire a few extra referees, and you'd have to get better cameras into the arenas that don't already play in NBA arenas. None of that, considering the fact that this is something that fans have been asking for years and has hit a fever pitch, no pun intended, in the last 2 years, is that difficult to accomplish. But the WNBA does not want to acknowledge that there is a problem. As Fee said, the WNBA wants to just fine everybody who says it's a problem. Cathy Engelbert said to Napheesa Collier herself that only losers complain about referees. I'd also like to add that that's not true. Becky Hammon, after the Las Vegas Aces won game 2, said that the physicality is out of control. She made a reference to the NFL and how you can't even bump and grab a receiver in the NFL the way that you can with a player on the offensive end. Freedom of movement, which is what that Alyssa Thomas non-call was about, and what a lot of the larger issue around overly physical play in the WNBA was supposed to be a point of emphasis this coming season. I have not really seen that. And I think we are way, way, way far past the point where the WNBA can continue to act like this is just like regular sports where nobody's ever happy with the officiating. This is a structural issue. And what it does is it creates this reality where we have an elimination game tonight in a couple of hours, which is what the focus should be today. And it is not the focus. The Phoenix Mercury are going back to the WNBA finals, and we should be talking about how Nick Urin and Nate Tibbetts turned this regime around and brought in this big three and are playing this amazing style of positionless basketball. And yes, it's there's like the physicality stuff that people might not like about it, but it's a really unique brand of basketball, and that is what we should be talking about. But like has been the case so many times since I've started doing this podcast, the basketball gets overshadowed by other stuff going on. And not all of that is controllable, but this league is just full of unforced errors, and the players are sick of it. And Fee in particular, I think, feels particularly empowered because she understands what it's like to run a league. And she has figured out that it is not as difficult as the WNBA makes it out to be.
That's right. That's all of that is very, very true. The WNBA has, at every step in the process, the WNBA's decision making is just very, very suspect. Just go back to how they came up with charter flights. It's like, we don't have charter flights. We're not doing charter flights. And owner comes out and says, I'll pay for everybody's charter flights. No, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. Caitlin Clark issues a statement. We have charter flights. And you ask people in the WNBA, when did you find out about charter flights? Well, the same time you found out, they issued a statement saying we have charter flights. It's like every decision, they don't seem to have a vision in place of where we're going, why we're doing this. They issue the whole process to me, and I've been writing about this for years. The whole fact that the NBA and the WNBA keeps announcing to the media that they lose money, and then the amount of money just keeps going up, even when the revenues and attendance keeps going up. So the story just gets more and more unbelievable as we go along, and that they keep saying this. It just strikes me as, if you're growing a league, why would you ever say that? That just doesn't make any sense to me to even say it. And then there's the fact that the NBA has been saying this line about the NBA for 5 decades, and they tend to say it a lot when there's collective bargaining agreements to be negotiated. It casts a lot of doubt on, do you have any credibility? Are you just making up stuff? And so this is what is troubling about all this, is that it doesn't feel, we're in a moment here where you have all these investors wanting to get in on this. And the attendance right now in the WNBA is past anything the NBA achieved at this point in its history. It's well past that. The revenue is past where the NBA was at this point in its history. So you look at those things, you're like, okay, this league is doing extremely well. And then you look at the leadership and you're like, it doesn't feel like you're the ones who are making this happen. You're not helping. You seem to consistently focus on the wrong stuff and not on, why don't we just, it feels like, here's the simplest thing they could do. They could simply say this: NBA players get 50% of basketball related income. WNBA players get the same thing. We're done. That's a negotiation. That's a deal. We're finished. The league is growing. I don't care if we make necessarily a profit on a piece of paper next year. I don't care, because I know where this is going, and this league is going to be worth billions, and this gets a huge headache out of the newspapers. The players are happy. I'm happy. We don't have to negotiate nothing. Everything is fine. And instead you're like, no, I'm going to nitpick every dumbass detail every step of the way. And you're like, why are you doing all that? And you just end up with this feeling like, I'm doing it just because I feel like I want to win this, or I want to make a point, or I want to teach these women a lesson that they owe us. And you're like, that's so petty and stupid. Why are you doing that? So
it is a very contentious relationship, right? Like, this is like something that also, one of the things that Fee said was that she had a number of people reach out to her about her injury. And the only person of note that she didn't hear back from was Cathy Engelbert herself. And the only thing that the only communication that she got from the league was from Cathy's number 2, saying that, the referees have nothing to do with physicality, and the physicality has nothing to do with injuries, which I don't even need to get into how baseline common sense of a narrative that is to try to even refute. And, to your point, the study doesn't make any sense. But it gets to just this general lack of bedside manner that we have continued to see from this commissioner and this league. You can go back to Nneka Ogwumike telling reporters that Cathy told her that she doesn't feel like the players even understand the business side of it. Engelbert just announced Natalie Nakasi as the coach of the year and pronounced her name wrong. Like, I just there's just so many unforced errors, like you can look at Sabrina Ionescu has talked about how she feels like she can go up and talk to Adam Silver and have a conversation with Adam Silver. And the players feel like that they can go and talk to Adam Silver. And you see Cathy have any interaction with the players. You can go back and look at, Paige Becker's getting the Rookie of the Year award. That's not the only example. Like, look back at just about any moment that Cathy Engelbert has given an award to a player, how animatronic that interaction looks. It looks like they are meeting for the first time. You can go back to the CNBC quote that she gave about how Angel and Caitlin and the racial aspect of the rivalry were actually good for the league. Meanwhile, it is creating a host of safety, mental health issues, physical health issues for the players. The New York Liberty skyline dress, like there's just so many things. There are so many things. There are so many things.
The skyline dress. What? How do you end up with a skyline dress? I just want to know where. Why are you shopping for that? Why is that something you would have?
At a certain point, you start to wonder if there's a level of actual sabotage